You're very welcome to our series of interviews with Irish home educated adults. And I am delighted today that I have Siobhan Kramer here with me. And Siobhan has a very unique story because not only was she home educated and generally unschooled, I would say, as a child, and chose to go into school, but also her own 4 children are being home educated. So you're getting a really good spectrum wide notion here. So thanks a million, Siobhan.
Thank you, Monica.
Do you want to say a bit about yourself? Do you want to tell us what age you are, maybe?
I'm 42.
You don't have to.
No, it's fine. I'm 42. I was home educated here in County Meath, and I'm the oldest of 10 kids. There wasn't much home ed going on in the whole country at the time. My parents were trailblazers, really, in that respect. They knew other home ed people, but nobody local. They were kind of scattered around. I think there came to be an organisation for home ed later, which turned into HEN, eventually the Home Education Network, which is still in existence today. But home educators, and there was no internet, of course, as well. So home educators had to contact each other. I'm trying to remember how. They just had to hear about each other, really, and ring each other. And there was no air codes to find people's houses and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of it was letter writing, actually, when you were small.
A lot of it was letter writing. And they did connect with other home educators, but like they would have only seen them occasionally, and there wasn't an organisation for it. And I think eventually it turned into people meeting at each other's houses or meeting for camping in each other's gardens, which eventually became what we have today. That there's several organisations, not just one, and the families get together and have a gathering. Well, they did before what's going on at the moment. But you know, it was more lonely in some sense. Partly just socially, societally, because home ed wasn't as normal or as heard of in this country. I know it's not that normal now, but there wasn't as much reassurance that you could just Google it and other people did it, and it was an organisation. They were very, and their families weren't exactly opposed to it, but they were concerned, and there was a lot of kickback, really. There wasn't much reassurance going on in society or their families or other people who had done it or how they had turned out or that they survived.
That's very true. Yeah. So do you remember learning to read? Because I think you were quite young.
Not really.
Okay.
I don't really remember learning. I just remember reading from as early as I could.
Okay.
And I still read all the time.
All the time. And then, because I know from talking to your folks that they kind of thought, oh, well, you're reading, so maybe you should go to school. And the school's attitude was, well, if you've never been to school, you have to start in junior infants. So that kind of gave your parents the hump, as I've heard the story. And then they said, sure, look, maybe they're learning as well enough at home. But then when you were in your teen years, I know you did a fair bit of kind of paid work. You got jobs with local families, or do you want to talk about what you did in your teen years before you chose school?
Yeah, I mean, it was assumed that I was good at babysitting because I had a lot of siblings. I don't think my siblings would agree at all. But I did get some jobs. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. I would have gone on my bike to, neighbours, to people who lived maybe 5 miles away or 6 miles away, and look after their kids a bit when I was, I think, about 14 or 15, and I would have minded their kids, probably more like 14, I think. I would have minded their kids a bit while they were working in Dublin, 2 small kids. Then I think when I was 16, I went to kind of live in with the family during the week in Meath and look after their kids while they were working. One of them was working on site from home, and the other one was working away. There was loads of babysitting, evening jobs as well that I did. I did a lot of babysitting, and I looked after my brothers and sisters a lot too. Looked after them in the nappiest sense. So they'll tell you, sorry, guys, sorry.
They also
I'd say sorry.
They all survived.
To them all, and I mean it. But yeah, I did look after kids. That was the way to. But like I know now, looking after kids, it sort of would be my nightmare job. No offense.
Other people's children.
Other people's children, yeah. I don't think I'm very naturally playful or anything like that. I'm quite serious, probably.
Okay.
So, but it was grand. It was grand. It got me out of the house, and it was a bit of money, and it was nice, and it was responsibility. I had a lot of responsibility, and I took a lot of responsibility. I looked after a friend's house actually when they were away down in the Iron Islands in Galway.
That's right, yeah.
When I was 13, I think. I was big into traveling from when I was very young.
Yeah, do you want to say a bit about that? I think you went to America and maybe Switzerland and Germany and stuff when you were fairly young.
I tried to run away down the road when I was 2 or 3. There's a
Okay.
picture of me with my little plastic bag, and I was running away from when I was very young. Yeah, when I was 6, I insisted that I was going to visit my uncle in London. I think he kind of said, "Oh, he must come and visit us sometime," and I wouldn't drop it until I did go and visit on my own for, I believe, a week. And my mum put me on a plane. You could do that then, and she said that I was like, "Bye, see you," and she was very, very sad and worried and all that. And I always wanted to go away and travel and talk to new people and see new places. And yeah, when I was 11, I went to America, to Boston, or sorry, Massachusetts, near Boston, to a little sort of smallish town for America, to another home ed family who I had met, but I didn't know them that well. And they had 2 sons. One was older than me and one was younger than me. And I spent 2 months there, including Christmas. I spent, I think, December and January there, or maybe November, December. I don't quite remember.
Okay.
And that was like a home ed exchange, I suppose. Then when I was, I think, 15, I had I developed an interest in German. I don't really remember why. And I decided to look for a family. I just wanted to go and spend some time in another country, and it turned out it ended up being Germany. And the reasons are not so clear now. I don't really remember why, but I was very lucky because I got sent to a family. My mum found a friend who had friends who had friends. There was a tenuous
Connection there, yeah.
connection, and we found this family, and they had 3 daughters, and the parents were just so lovely. I went on the bus on my own. I was 15, I think, and I was put on the bus in Dublin, where I got the bus to the boat, and the boat to the Hook of Holland, I think it was. But then another bus to Amsterdam, where I changed buses and got another bus to Bremen in the north of Germany. So I did that trip on my own, and which is like, God, seems so mad now when you don't let teenagers out of sight. You know,
Can you imagine putting your 15-year-old
no way,
now? Yeah,
no
yeah.
way. Well, I definitely wouldn't be allowed at the moment. But yeah, I was very, very, very lucky to go to this family. They're still, the oldest daughter is a year or 2 younger than me, and she's a really, really close friend still. The parents were just so lovely. The dad refused to talk English to me. It turned out he's not bad at English, but he just wouldn't talk English at all, and that was great. He really got me.
So it was immersion for you.
It was immersion. I mean, the mom was able to speak English fairly well, and the daughters were learning English at school, so I suppose they were. It was a bit of an exchange. But I spent 3 months there, and obviously I was socializing. I was going to the school. They went to a Steiner school, and I spent a bit of time there. I didn't go there all the time, but I went enough to meet other people and have a bit of crack.
So that your first experience at school was at the age of 15 in Germany, going to Steiner school in a different language.
Yeah, exactly. And I was, it probably was an introduction where I thought, actually, school's all right. Maybe I might.
Okay.
I was starting to feel like doing something else, I guess, besides being home. And I thought, God, this school's okay. You know, I should say there was a lot to be said for Steiner schooling. It's at that time it started at, I think, 8 o'clock in the morning, and you were off by 1 o'clock usually. Okay. So you didn't have to be in school all day. There was a huge amount of art and dance and painting and artistic pursuits.
And being in tune with the seasons and stuff.
Yeah.
Out of there.
Steiner education would be quite nature oriented, and I now don't think it's the best thing in the world. I'd have some issues with it, but like it was a really good thing to do at the time, and the family were just so amazing. They ended up being such close friends with us all.
Okay.
And the oldest daughter has 3 kids now, and we would see each other. We would have seen each other regularly before
when travel was easier.
Yeah, they're really close friends, and so that was. Then when I came home, I had been thinking about studying for my leaving cert at home, but I just found it too much of a slog. I had the books and I was trying to study, and it was just not. I had no structure. I had no. It probably didn't fit in that great to my parents' lifestyle at home as well. It was a very busy house, quite noisy, quite small, not much peace and quiet, and I'm not the most probably self-motivated person for. I didn't know where to start really, but trying to educate myself for leaving cert. It was a big undertaking. But then I thought, well, okay, I'll just go to school. That was handy enough. I'll go to school for 2 years and get my leaving cert. Didn't really know what I wanted. I still don't. And and I think that there was a certain element, I think, now of trying to prove myself. I think my parents experienced a fair bit of opposition and doubt, and understandably, people
From
cared,
neighbours and family
yeah,
members and stuff. Yeah.
and stuff like that, and them and themselves. I think I was quite drawn to reading, and I was quite academic, and I thought this is something that I probably won't find too difficult, or I naturally am a reader and fairly academic, I suppose, and it was time to get out in the world and meet more people and get outside the just being at home, I suppose, all the time. So I went into leaving cert, or sorry, fifth year. I'm just trying to think. I think we were just talking about this yesterday. I was 16, I think.
I think you were 17. I think you
Oh, sorry, you
turned
think I'm
17 in January, and then you
I
went
was
in
19
that September. I think you were
doing
19 and a
research.
half
You're
doing
right.
research. And so the two bits, so you had
Or
your
was I?
German kind of,
No, I was 18 in school.
seriously?
I just remembered.
Okay.
I turned 18 I remember getting a cake for my 18th birthday from all the girls in school, and that was in my leaving cert year. I just
Okay.
remembered. So I think I
Okay.
must have been 16.
Oh, 16
I
and
was
a half,
15
okay.
when I went to Germany, and I think I did fairly shortly after that. I must have gone the next year when I was 16,
Okay.
I think.
And so you felt, or your parents felt, that the gaps maybe were Irish and maths, and that you needed to sort them out. So you went up to Guido, I think. Did you do a course?
Yeah, I
in
don't
Donegal
think
for Irish?
my parents, my mum would have been frank with me about what they were, but my parents never, in fairness to them, they never said there were any gaps. They never tried to.
Okay.
It was more pressure coming from me, maybe, or societally. I wanted to prove myself, and I knew I did really struggle with maths. Still do. I'm not keen on them. But I knew that I needed to pass maths and Irish if I wanted to do a leaving cert. And
Okay.
and there wasn't much. I think there's a lot more options now, but it felt at the time. This is 1997, I think. It was 97. I think when I did my leaving cert. Yes, I was 18 that year. So I was like, haha, only messing.
Sorry.
Yeah, when I did my leaving cert, I lost my thread now. There wasn't BTEC or anything like that, or wasn't. There were probably other routes to third level or other routes to education, but there was you didn't hear much about anything besides leaving cert, and it was hugely high.
Yeah. And you didn't want to wait till you were 23.
I didn't want to wait and go back as a mature student, and I wasn't really aware of many other routes. It was just leaving cert seemed to be where it was at, and there's a lot of talk about leaving cert. Whereas I hope now, I really hope, it seems to me that there are other routes now and that not everybody feels obliged to do it. I know a lot of your kids and my younger siblings have taken other routes, but it also kind of suited me. I was happy enough to go and give leaving cert a bash and give myself a test by the same metric as most people my age. So I went into school, and I stayed in ordinary level maths. I didn't. Your late husband Eddie, who was a woodwork teacher, was he a maths teacher?
He's metalwork was actually his subject, but then he was teaching woodwork, and he would also have taught maths and religion and whatever people needed to slot into.
Yeah, he would have given me maths grinds and helped me with maths, and he kind of said, well, you'll be able you can do higher level maths if you want, but I felt very underconfident about maths, and I'm trying to remember if my mum, who was very academic at school, I didn't really know when I was talking to all these people and struggling with kind of maths in fifth year. I wasn't sure if I was able for higher level maths. I just think it would have taken up too much energy, and I decided to stay in ordinary level, and I got a lot of help from Eddie getting through that and building my confidence about it, because I had shied away from maths a lot all my life, and I'd just been like, maths. But languages I was okay at. I had found from going to Germany, and I'm a talker and I'm a reader and all that. And we heard of a Gaeltacht that was not. It was a Gaeltacht light a bit, because it was an adult education college up in Gweedore. I think it was Gweedore. No, sorry, it was Glencolmkill. A place called Idjasgale, and there was a guy called Liam, I can't think of his surname, who ran the whole place, and it was like an adult education place where you went for Irish classes in the day. There were Cayleys and stuff like that in the evening. You stayed with, I can't remember, did I stay in a B&B, or was it with family? Or I can't actually remember that. But like, it wasn't like you'd be kicked out if you spoke English, which I was a bit worried about. And I learned a bit, and I think I found between learning, I did ordinary level Irish. I didn't do higher level Irish as well. That was, took the pressure off myself a bit. But I went ahead and did it, and between learning the poem and learning an essay and learning the verbs and all that kind of thing, I did manage to make it up in 2 years. I found I really encountered a lot of horror, hatred, terror of the Irish language, how it's taught at school. People seem to hate it.
Which is a pity. Yeah.
Which is really a pity. It really is a pity.
Beautiful.
It is beautiful.
Part of our heritage.
Totally. I really get that. And it wasn't a horrible experience for me, but there was a fair bit of rote learning and just trying to get myself through it. And
But I guess they point for people who are scared that if they're unschooling a bit or not sticking to the curriculum, is that when the young person figures out what they want to do, and even if there's something that's tough, they'll just motivate themselves and get through that in order to get to the other side, which was, in your case, was to do a degree in UCD. Well, you went in to do English, German, and psychology?
Yeah, I did an arts degree and after my leaving cert, and if I wanted to do pure psychology, when I was offered second year psychology, which not everyone was, it was difficult enough to get into. I had to decide whether I wanted to do an English and German degree or do pure psychology and drop my other two subjects. And it was a bit of I don't know if I did the right thing.
Okay.
I did, the psychology degree was grand, but like I think probably what I was more interested in, and I didn't know, it was psychotherapy and counselling. I'm more interested in how people's minds work, human relations. It was a general entry level undergrad psychology degree, and it was good. And there was aspects of it that were very interesting. I found the philosophy and psychology module in my final year amazing. I found neuropsych quite interesting, but yeah, I was a little bit put off doing it in the long term because it became a moot point anyway because I had kids very soon after that. But like, it seemed like a very competitive route to get into clinical, which was the main area. Enough of people seemed to be. I thought maybe I could have done education psychology. I thought about doing a PhD if it was at the time to do teaching. I didn't know, but while I was still thinking about it, and I did a year in Berlin. Then
so you had your Erasmus year.
Had my Erasmus year. Brilliant. It was amazing, but not much studying went on, I got to tell you. But it was a very good year.
And you had to come back, and as if I remember correctly, had to kind of negotiate with the powers that be in the college that you would, pass your Erasmus year by submitting some extra
You're
work.
Embarrassing me.
No, I think this is a really good skill.
I didn't have to submit any extra work, but I was short of credits for passing the year in Germany, unsurprisingly. I was working full time pretty much the whole way through it in the pub, which closed at 4 o'clock in the morning. And
to fund yourself through
and year to live it up. Yeah, it was definitely to keep a roof over my head. I didn't, my parents wouldn't have had the money to,
fund your year.
To fund my year. Absolutely not. And I worked, I should say that too. I think that's actually very important. I want my kids to hear this too. I worked the whole way through university as well. And I worked the whole way through school as well. I got a job in the local hospital in Trim, which is where I went to school.
Yeah.
And I would have worked
a lot. Which was a nursing home.
Nursing home, yeah. I worked a lot of Easters and Christmases and holidays there as well to save up the money, because my parents, when they had a lot of kids and they didn't have a huge amount of money at the time, and I think it was one of their ethos, what's the plural of ethos, that they brought us up with was, to try and live on less, better quality of life, spending more time with their family, something I've really taken on board, and I think it was a very beautiful principle. But it wasn't, it was hard to relate sometimes to some people and the amount of pocket money they had. And in UCD, I would say the level of privilege that
I know. Some people is more comfortable than others and has more money in their pocket.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But I think it was a great gift they gave us in a lot of ways too. It didn't feel like it at the time always, but like knowing that like this is where money comes from and you have to bloody work hard for it and so on, and you have to really want something.
It's an important principle, I think, to pass on, and certainly,
I think we can I think without getting too much into the philosophy of it, like my mom is very well read on educational theory and kind of, she's an incredibly well read, intelligent person, who talks about like the flip in thinking we've had of education being a right, as in let's not send children down mines anymore or whatever,
or
send them working or up the chimneys, that they have a right to education, fair enough. But I would say I've seen a bit of a trend towards education at any cost these days.
Yes.
Everything has to be turned into an educational award.
Yeah, and also anything that people feel they will spend money on education, it has to be monetized at the end of it. It has to be towards a goal of making money rather than to developing some aspect of a personality or just following your interest. And if you can make money out of it, that seems to be the goal for a lot of people, which is sad. That it's a very, I don't know, I see it as a mercenary kind of a monetizing notion about learning, which is, I think, again, sort of the idea of fulfilling a person's talents or, you know,
Totally. Yeah, and
that
it's a
kind of
balance.
notion.
It's you know, the system we're in is working the way it is, and I don't working the way it is, and I don't know how to propose. I don't have an alternative model. But yeah,
Yes.
it's a shame to see it, man. It's like we've lost something in the whole thing of education as a right. I've noticed a tendency towards it becoming an obligation for some people who maybe in academic education really doesn't suit them at all, but their talents in a practical area or whatever are devalued, and that's very sad. It's very sad.
For some reason, we think that car mechanics are worth less than lawyers or something. Like we have a scale that doesn't seem.
Or childcare workers.
Or
That's the one I
yeah,
really.
yeah. It's it's to me like it's nobody really
cleaners
should be paid more than midwives and nurses. I really think they're the
they're
the
amazing.
high end of the market.
They're really amazing. Yeah, but you know, all work has value. I think we forget that all work has value.
Yeah.
In our push to get out of work so that we don't have to do anything. But,
that's it. And the people who get their hands dirty, either taking carrots and potatoes out of the soil for us or doing an oil change on our cars, you know, and the people who midwife us into life and see us out of life, I think they're like, yeah, we need to prioritize them as kind of having, yeah, as much dignity as any other profession, really.
Everyone's got value and everything has value. And again, my mum, I really take my hat off to her understanding of theories like basic minimum wage. I don't really understand it enough or haven't studied enough to know how it would work, but I like the idea of basic minimum wage as far as she's explained it to me. I know very little about it. I maybe shouldn't even be bandying it about, but I think it's important to say we're so biased towards education at any cost and education to the hilt just because you can or just because you're intelligent, or and not so much what's your heart calling you to do.
What are your unique gifts for your family and the world and your community and that kind of stuff?
And how will you thrive? Are you happy in it? I think, isn't that the biggest question? What are we happy doing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's brought us to 20 years ago, and you've just qualified from UCD with your degree, and then you head off to England.
Finished. I graduated then 2002, I think, and I moved straight to England. I'd gotten together with my husband, my future husband at that point, and I moved to England with him, and oh God, it all happened so fast.
You lived in Oxford and you were doing Pilates training?
Yeah, I did Pilates teacher training. I didn't go straight into that. I did a lot more care work actually first. I did mental health care work, and I was actually considering, and I did geriatric care work. I've done a fair bit of that too, as in auxiliary nursing. I never got a nursing qualification, but I was considering, will I do a psychology master's or a PhD? I was kicking that around a little bit, thinking, will I go on and do a higher degree? And I kind of felt after working in mental health in England a bit, I don't really think it's for me. I wonder if I could go off on one about absolutely anything I'm saying. But I did find a bit that maybe that I think there's a lot to be said for care work as well. It's not a very well paid job, and in some cases it's completely unpaid. We know that too. It's holding the fabric of society together, both the paid and the unpaid versions. But I did feel that the psychology element of it, the fact that there was a psychologist who came into this setting of somebody who's in mental health, they're supported living for mental health reasons, it felt very disconnected from the people who were actually caring for these people, clients on a day-to-day level. And there was something about that obviously I'm not having a pop at psychology. I absolutely think it's got its place. There's some very interesting stuff in it, but I do think it's quite normative, Western centered, white cis hetero blah blah blah, so, and all that.
All those boxes.
Yeah, and I don't think I was super comfortable with that, and I could see it was a long and arduous academic route. And I don't have anything against academics either, or the academic route, but I think again when it's placed above all other routes, I have a bit of a problem with that. And there is a sense of a remove from what's going on the ground among care workers, people who are on the poverty line, ordinary people who are just
working very hard, finding it hard to keep a roof over their heads,
and have no time or energy to think about, well, what do I want, and all the things that we have the privilege to think about on a daily basis. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't go any further with it, and an awful lot of it was I got married and had kids, and very, very soon. It was only I got married in 2004, and I got married in 2003, so I must have moved to England in 2002. confused. And my oldest son was born in 2005.
Mhm.
And I had another child in very quick succession. But I moved back to Ireland then with my partner when my son was about 3 months old. I wanted to be near my family and have family support. And then in the middle of it all, we bought a piece of land fairly remotely. Well, fairly remotely. It's fairly near where my parents are, but it's in a remote little corner of the bog in County Meath. And I found that tough to begin with, and I still find it tough sometimes. It's a bit. I was used to city living, and I kind of liked city living, and I grew up very feeling a bit like, oh, I'm stuck out here in the middle of the country, and now I'm still stuck out here in the middle of the country. But I've grown to love a lot about it, and we're also very lucky, um, especially at the moment, to have a bit of room and space and a yeah. I didn't send my own kids to school then. Obviously, I had 4 kids in total, and the other two, there's a bit more of a gap to them. They're currently age 7 and almost 11. Um, and then I went back and did a postgrad actually a couple of years ago. And I just don't know if that's
Yeah.
where my life was going to be at
Okay.
either. It was what was called a postgraduate certificate in sexuality and sexual health in DCU. I was kind of prompted to do that by having been home for a very long time and going a bit gaga with it in ways. I'd done a lot of voluntary work. I'd been on the home birth committee with yourself and other people, and the home ed network committee. I spent a fair bit of time on that. Sorry. And La Leche League, I did breastfeeding support, lay breastfeeding counselling for about 10 years ish, or maybe not quite. And that was all lovely, but I kind of wanted to maybe get out there into a different environment and meet more normal people. I know that's not fair. Yeah, it just seemed like time. I went and did postgrad, and it was a really important moment. I think I was inspired to do it partly because I've been very dismayed about the information that's come out about the Catholic Church, and I'm very well aware of the control of education they've had. And again, I'm not slagging off anybody's religion or right to practice their religion, but it's really, really horrifying the stuff that's going on in this country in the name of religion too. And when I supported the kind of Yes Equality Forum, the referendum and the abortion referendum, I kind of thought I'd like to be part of the vanguard of changing how the dialogue around sexuality in this country. And I was encountering a fair bit of fear from parents that if you spoke openly about sexual matters, then there was somehow giving children license to behave sexually inappropriately younger, or it just is a bit of a thing of mine, and I'm investigating in lots of different ways, and the hangover of all that stuff we have in our past and the effect on people's sexuality. So it seemed like an area of interest, and it also seemed like an area of up and coming that I thought I might get a bit of work in it. But like I haven't worked in it so far. I did my postgrad. It was great experience going back, but like.
And you got a lot personally out of the course.
I did get a lot personally out of the course. Yeah, I enjoyed it, learned a lot of interesting stuff. Found it was very different going back as a older student. I was so bloody diligent. Like I just did the bare minimum when I went to UCD and partied my head off, almost literally. And yeah, but this was like I was so organized, and I had to go to the library in DCU to study and library in Trim very, very frequently and spend long periods studying, because there was absolutely no way I could get anything done at home. Like no way with 4 kids and all the stuff that's going on here. So I had to be really disciplined about it and be a forward planner. I would have been a last minute stay up the night before an exam and try and cram some stuff into my head kind of studier. And I was very, very organized about it, and I was very much more inclined to think about it and disagree with certain things I was learning, or not necessarily openly, just for my own sake, look at what's being taught out there at the moment in institutes of education, and realise I've got my own spin on it. And but I think one of the main things I learned was everybody is looking for a little bit of what I have, a little bit of living in the country and a bit of peace and space. I kind of think I was feeling so beleaguered by being at home for such a long time, and it being so intensive with kids. Yeah, I was isolated, and I think especially when kids were younger. When my first 2 were small, but like I kind of realized how good I have it in a lot of ways, and and that I can change my lifestyle a bit. I've taken up running. I kind of can't believe I'm saying that, because I used to sort of nearly not like people who went running, because it's like, well, I can't do that. But it's been an important part of my mental health. I've always been so bookish that I find it difficult to get my body moving. I've done a fair bit of yoga actually, and I did do that Pilates teacher training years ago. But like running is, I can't do that. And now I do run, and I like running, and I love to be outside now.
And you've done half marathons, and you
done half marathons. Yeah, that's the furthest I've gone.
Okay.
I met a guy the other day who ran for 13 solid hours, and I was like,
there's always one.
There's always someone who does more than you. But it's been really good. And I'm excited about the next chapter. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I'm open to it, still learning. Yeah.
So do you want to talk a bit about like your 15 and 16 and 7 and 10-year-olds, and about the process of deciding with your husband not to send them to school, or then when they jacked up and said, actually, we want to try school? Or
Sure, yeah. I don't think we ever thought we were going to send them to school. My husband has known my family for a long time, and I think he always approved of home ed. He thought it was a good choice. He hated school, absolutely hated school.
His own experience in England.
Yeah, his own experience in England. He really, really didn't like it, and he didn't. I don't know, really. You'd have to ask him. He didn't like being told what to do. He didn't feel that it catered to his interests. He didn't appreciate the social interactions and I'm again not having a pop at school, but the stuff that is endemic in schools, that to some degree of having to, I don't know what's the word, bullying and stuff like that. He didn't really experience bullying. I believe he was tough. He kind of chased bullies away because he was a bit tough at school. But he's very introverted, really, I suppose, and
he likes his own company. And
he likes his own company, and he thought he left school, I think, when he was maybe 15. And then he went back to sixth form college to do his A-levels later when he wanted to. And like myself, he wanted to do it, and he did it, even though he had almost, I think, deliberately not tried his hardest at school because he just wasn't enjoying it. And he really found that experience. He saw for himself that when he wanted to learn, he was ready to learn. He did learn. And what was the point of trying to make people learn when they don't want to learn? It's not possible. I mean, you might be doing something, but it's not learning. So he was totally on board with it. And in some ways, he's been more we have to talk each other off the ledge regularly every day. And I think this is a really important thing to say about, not just about home ed, but I think about parenting. You have to talk yourself off the ledge every day and be like, I hope I'm doing right by these kids. Yeah. All I can do is my best and what I think is right, but I could be wrong. And I'm definitely wrong about some things. And they're definitely going to tell me I'm wrong. They already do, which is great, but not easy. So we kept them out of school. We didn't ever really do curriculum. We would have taught my first two to read maybe a little bit more. Well, we didn't sit down and do reading lessons with them, but it was a bit more maybe structured, or we were looking out for cues to kind of get them reading, more so than with the second two, I think. And we would have done that. My husband actually did most of. He'd shown them flashcards, showing them letters and words that began with those letters, and he is brilliant with little kids, really good at playing games with them and singing songs with them, and we read to them constantly. We did read to them a lot. We both loved reading. And I believe that's a very good way to encourage them to read. So this was before kind of screens became such a big thing as well. They loved books, and I remember bringing them to other people's houses for league Christmas parties and stuff like that. People saying, "How do you get them to sit and just look at books?" And I was like, "I don't know. They just do. I don't.
Yeah, it's not a force.
I'm not getting them to do it. They just they wouldn't have had screens. I would have restricted screens very heavily too for them. They weren't as ubiquitous as they are these days either, but I was a bit fearful about screens, and I still am in some ways. I'm all for not interfering with kids' interests, but I think as a species, the amount of time we're all spending on screens is not great for our mental or physical health either. But like I do feel these days, it's my kids' own, and I feel this in every aspect of their lives, not just with regard to screens, that it's their own thing to sort out. It's their own responsibility to sort out their relationship to addictive substances like screens and sugar and whatever the other addictive substances are in time that they will encounter.
Yes.
That's the hardest thing to get out of the way. And I'm long-time friends with you, and have had many other people out there who've helped me on my parenting journey, my parents and other people too. And Monica, we've had so many chats about leaving them alone and letting them go and letting them And that would be my, I
And that
suppose we're
don't-
unschoolers, although I don't like the term
the
unschoolers
term.
either.
Yeah, it's hard to
'cause
buttonhole and
we're not
pigeonhole
radical
ourselves.
unschoolers, and
Yeah.
we make it up as we go along, and every day is different, and we're wildly inconsistent and so on.
That's it. And John Holt's thing about trusting children, like, is probably the hardest thing that any of us who kind of felt a bit like squished by the parenting we experienced ourselves, or the stuff that was in our lives or in our relationships. Like, it's something we have to remind ourselves that, you know, sometimes it's just about providing the environment. And like, I know my lads have been listening to various podcasts, and I think Russell Brand did talk a lot about how addiction is really comes out of a lack of connection. And hopefully, if you have the base root connection with your children from the births and the breastfeeding and the early years of having a supportive, loving adult with them at all times, that has given them enough connection that then when they meet the addicted substances, they'll have the, you know, the wherewithal and whatever to withstand it, or to get through it, or to.
Yeah, but I would definitely say, as a caveat, that it's entirely and completely possible to not home educate, home birth, breastfeed, and all those things, and still have
And
a great
have the
connection with
connection,
your
of
children.
course,
I think
of
that's
course.
really important to say.
Yeah.
That was definitely what I did, and it was what you did. But I think there's, you know, I just love to see I really feel for parents. I really, really feel for parents. It's so hard these days it's so isolating and lonely, and you're blamed for so much these days. Almost in a way we never were. You know, there was it's been really hard for parents all through time. It was tough for my parents too, and I mean, I wouldn't fancy living in the Middle Ages either. But you know, there's a lot on parents these days to, you know, just so many things. All I can think of now is internet names about this kind of thing. You know, don't forget the coconut oil, give them an organic diet and not too much screen and plenty of stimulation, blah 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 blah. Connection, I agree with you, connection is so important, but it doesn't guarantee anything. I think that's really important to say too. It doesn't guarantee anything. They all, you know, they'll all experience their parents in a different way and the world in a different way. They're all different.
And even ones who are close in age, like, I found that personality is so important. Like, when I had a time when I really felt television wasn't a good experience for my children, and I wanted to either get rid of it or restrict it terribly. And I know that I had two children very close in age, and we used to say to one of them, like, if I videotaped toilet paper ads for 5 hours, you'd watch it. Whereas the other one would, like, pick a half-hour program he really wanted to watch it, and no matter what was on next, he was going and doing Lego or something. So it's
they're all so different, and I think that's learning to respond to your child as they are. And even when we think about deprogramming our own social programming or familial programming or whatever, I think we overemphasize our own role. Like, on the one hand, we're so hard on ourselves as parents, and society is so hard on us. But in another way, it's learning to take ourselves out of the center of the picture and just see what is unfolding in front of us. That's the hardest thing and the most. And it gives us a break to some extent. There's great freedom in realizing
it's not everything what you do.
Have fun. I have to shout out to Jane Donegan, as well as my own kids, my own parents, and my own kids, and yourself. Jane Donegan was another person who was so, and is so, always been there, kind of a bit further ahead of me, and as in her kids were older, and she always said, I wish I could go back in time and give myself less of a hard time. Stop worrying about them so much. And I still worry about my kids.
And we do this reductions thing where it's cause and effect. Like, a child is anxious or a child is scared of something, so it must have been something I didn't give them.
That was a huge moment for me. Sorry to interrupt you, but when I always say that about parenting, I used to think all you had to do was do A and B would happen. And it doesn't take, only takes about 10 years because you realize that is so not true at all. And you can, and yes, it's very reductionist, but it's what people tend to do.
Yes.
And it's what society, you did, that's happening because you did this. Or you
and
did
we
that.
look at children.
And that's egocentric.
Completely. But we look at children who end up addicted or homeless or in prison, and we say that's because of this thing that the parent did or this thing that the parent didn't do. And there's so many more factors at play. And we do need to kind of, let ourselves off the hook a little bit and just try and not that we shouldn't do that we shouldn't do our best, but I do think I remember Belinda Wilde actually also saying to me, who's another home educator years ago, you just have to follow your heart and find joy in it, find the joy in parenting. I think that's so important. If you're not having a good time, you need to look at what you're doing. And I've said this to other parents for years, but I find it much easier to tell other parents this than practice it myself. Whenever they say, oh, I'm really worried about my child, as I worry about my children,
so often. I say, what do you need yourself? If you're worrying, it's time to think, how
What
can I make
nurturing.
myself get myself out of this anxious state? So much of the time, it's giving to yourself, and I know giving to yourself is hard, and it's hard when you are trying to hold down a job and you're trying to pay a mortgage, and it's also hard when you're home with your kids all the time and you're lucky enough to be as I was. Life is fucking hard, and being a human being is hard. But like you have to find, I think you have to find the joy in life. It's so important to find the joy in life.
And sometimes it's
what
bits
gives
of
you
the
joy.
puzzle. Like I can remember like suggesting books or things that we would have read together or read. Yeah, I would have said maybe The Alert Active Child is what will give you an insight into this. And it's just to have enough resources and have enough. I don't know if it's self-belief or self-confidence, but it's just kind of, we're very hard on ourselves.
Yes.
And we don't have enough nurturing, like in our own environments and stuff. And the blame game is just a step away from any of us at any time.
We live in a blame culture, yeah, we do. And I've actually loved, I do still love books, and I still enjoy books, but when you mention, often it'll be the right book, you'll come across the right book for you, or you'll help someone with the right book for them, or you will say the right thing for someone, just like I'm remembering things that were said. But I have found, and this is gratifying, that as time has gone on, I have more and more stopped reading parenting books and just thought, do you know what? I can't follow any doctrine like that to the letter. They can be really helpful at times, even if they can be
just
one
give you a
good
little
idea,
inside.
just one little reminder. But it's fantastic to realize the freedom in, and it's never going to be exactly like that book or that person. You've got to just go with what's going on in here, go with what's going on in your gut, and keep looking, chasing the joy. Yeah,
chasing the joy. That's a good one. And do you want to talk a bit about your eldest who decided that, was it 8 and 9 decided to try and
the age again
to try and go to school?
Yeah, when it was Joe really, who's my oldest. He maybe was about 7. He decided he wanted to try school, and you were one of the people I rang, and he was like, the kids want to go to school, and I've always said, they can try school if they want, but I didn't think they'd really want to.
I know, you were hoping they wouldn't push you on that.
I wasn't afraid of them, but I kind of thought there were various aspects of. There was a load of different complications and factors. One of them was that I didn't really want to have him in the local school because I thought it was a bit monocultural. It was nice that it was small and it was local and it was nearby, but I wasn't keen on the idea of religious school, and I didn't think it was very diverse culturally and so on. So I brought him to the Educate Together 45 minutes away, which there wasn't one a bit nearer. There would have been one only 20 or 25 minutes away now, but that school hadn't been established yet. And that in itself was a big, like, dying on the cross. And my principals, like, there was a lot of driving involved and getting up very early to get the bus and stuff. And it was a big, busy school, and lots of SNAs, lots of additional needs, and lots of kids who needed language support too. A lot going on, and the school up the road was very, very small, and good school too, I've heard. But his sister wanted to try it as well. She would have been about 6 at the time, I think. And I put them in school. I asked could they go in for the last 6 weeks of the year, I think, before they broke up for the summer holidays, which I think was something you said. Just give them a lash at it, and maybe they won't want to go back by September. But they did want to go back in September, and that was a bit of an identity crisis too, because I don't, because I didn't home educate anymore, or I was, I had 3 kids at that point, and then I found out that I was going to be having my 4th kid that summer, as on the school sports day, I seem to remember, and I found out, but no, it was grand. But I think Alex, my husband, always says it's because they read the Harry Potter books. He puts it down to
they were looking for Hogwarts.
They were looking for Hogwarts, and they wanted to get out and do something different. Of course they did, and it was a good experience. And the school were great. They were very supportive. The teachers were lovely. The principal was great and very accommodating. And we actually, when we went to them at it was a Christmas, I think, and said that the kids had had enough, that they actually decided that they didn't hate school, but they were like, oh, I think it was just the slog of being in there 5 days a week and probably having to get up so early. But when we spoke to the principal and said the kids have had enough, thanks, and thank you so much for all you've done, she said, well, could they try just coming in a couple of days a week just to keep the connection?
That was
amazing. The amount of people I know who have asked for flexi schooling, and they really would love flexi schooling, and they feel it would really work for them. but for whatever reason, the principal, and it's not, I know the principal's hands are tied in lots of ways. And in practice, we did think in practice it would be hard to work, and in ways it was, because I can't remember what we decided. I think maybe they went in Monday and Tuesday, and they didn't go in Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sorry, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or something. It was, I think they only went in 2 days a week, I think. But she let us pick, and they had to be registered with Tusla then, because or we chose to register with Tusla. I know not everyone does, because we were no longer covered by school insurance because they weren't full time. But she said that's fine. You can be registered home educated, and you can come in 2 days, and that's a big concession too, because we live in such a litigious
an awful lot of
culture.
families have found that wasn't not an option. Yeah, it was definitely refused.
So she was so good and accommodating of her wishes, and she said she fully understood that it's too long of a week. She said, I think it is too long of a week and too long of a day on kids, and I would wholeheartedly agree. Not to mention the fact that they have to do homework then when they get home. We don't ask it of adults. It's an awful lot to ask of kids. But yeah, so but we'd only did that up to about Easter, at which stage my fourth child had been born. And then they said, look, yeah, it just wasn't that hugely workable. Like, it was, they'd had enough of school, I think. They just had enough. They tried it and they wanted to see what it was like, and it wasn't what they thought it was going to be. And it wasn't a bad experience, but it was not. They were like, yeah, we're ready to come out, and they did, and they've been home since. So that's all.
And they've tried different things, like in terms of group activities. Like, there's been a bit more than when you and your siblings were younger. I guess there's more groups of home educators around who were doing things like, I don't know, getting together in forests, or getting together at climbing places, or there's been fun centres, and there has been a bit more opportunity to have regular access to other families.
Yeah, and the most amazing stuff going on as well, like extracurricular activities are such a thing these days. That's another thing I would say. Kids' schedules can be very heavily crowded, and adult schedules can be very, very crowded. I love rest. I think rest is great. But we've been so lucky. We've had chocolate making workshops. We've had drama. My oldest was into musical theatre for a while, and he was in the local musical society for a couple of years, and was in a couple of plays there. That was really, for musicals, it was really, really good experience for him. They've done archery with a local group. They were in scouts. God, what else? They've done little art things at the home ed conference, the home education conference that's run every year, gathering. Sorry, they've had great experiences with that. With there's people sharing all kinds of skills. They love getting together with all the other children who are home educated, and just like living in a village with friends, like-minded people for a few days. Yeah, no, and the climbing wall, as you say, we've gone to awesome walls in Finglas for a while and done courses there, and they've done certs there, and they've dabbled in music a little bit. They haven't done a huge amount of music, but they're, I'm leaving the door open for it, and yeah, no, they've had opportunities to do loads of stuff. They're not. My son was actually on Zoom doing piano lessons for a little while at the beginning of the first lockdown, but none of them are doing any. Oh, so I'm sorry, my youngest is doing circus skills on Zoom at the moment as well. My 7-year-old, and he's loving that. Yeah, so there are great opportunities these days to do whatever and meet people who are home educated and not home educated. And parkour, they've done parkour. That was I should mention parkour. They loved parkour.
And you did a bit of silks. Did you?
That was me now. Yeah,
that was
done circus skills. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
So if there's anything that a parent is thinking about, say they've got a couple of small kids and they're thinking about not sending them into school, like they've got a 2 and 4-year-old, and they're kind of, it's just unknown in their family and in their, they haven't already got their support network. Is there anything you might offer them as a bit of reassurance, or is there anything? Because I mean, you've seen it from both sides, from being a home educator yourself and then taking that choice with your husband for your 4 kids. So is there anything you might?
Yeah, I would say absolutely go for it if you want to give it a go. And please don't worry if you don't look like that family up the road that all the things really perfect and the kids are always really clean and they're always turned out and polite, and you feel like your kids are not, or don't compare yourself to anyone else.
And comparisons are odious.
The comparison is the thief of joy. And don't forget also that your kids, God, it's so easy to compare them to kids who are more social, say, or less social, or more communicative or less communicative, or just try to be yourself and trust children was a very good little phrase that you told me years ago, and I've often said it, and try to live it. It doesn't matter how much education, formal education you've had yourself, or what your what your qualifications are, which that's going to be one of the first things you're going to hear if
Are
you
you
go
a
down the home.
teacher?
Are you
Yeah.
a teacher? Are you qualified to teach these kids? Everyone is qualified these days, even if you don't have the internet yourself. We have libraries. Well, we don't have them at the moment. I know.
When we
But
can
like,
get back to that. Yeah.
even if you don't, I mean, yeah, it was looking for books. That was what we had to do when we were kids. But like, it's not like there's some crucible of information that's only available in schools, or it's, you know, you will learn so much. I would say be very careful. Try to keep up doing something you enjoy as well, and try to give each other time to do. Like, it's great if you have family or someone to, or other parents, where you can give each other, you can all get together and get the kids together and they can play and you can talk. You'll need to be able to talk to other parents and talk yourselves off the ledge very frequently.
And it is hard on parents who are solo parenting or whatever and don't have a partner.
It's hard.
Yeah,
a lot of people have approached me over the last few years and said, I'm a solo parent, and I've told them about you and other people I've known who did solo parenting home ed for longer or you know, shorter periods of time, but that it is more of a challenge. You'll need it's absolutely, I mean, there's a question obviously too as to whether it's financially doable. I hear about that quite a lot, but again, I think it's not an absolute. You don't, there, of course there are some people who for whatever reason they cannot, they have to work. I get that, but I have even heard of people who work full time and somehow they swing it that they home ed. I'm not sure how. But
some people make their hours, as I understand it, dovetail against somebody else's, or get childcare for some of the time, depending on the age of their kids, or maybe they've got a teenager that they can trust to be at home for a bit. I mean, there's all sorts of ways of working it. It's really deciding, I think, is this something we want to try for our family? And what I would always encourage parents who are scared, because it is scary and it is, I suppose, something you have to make a recommitment to every year or whatever, is to don't think of it as a decision from now until 18, 19, 20. Think of it as we're doing it today, we're doing it this week. And then your kids will surprise you by saying that they want to try something and you'll figure out ways of doing it. But I think, like, what I see, particularly in your family, is sort of a great mix of the academic, but also the practical skills and like the stuff that our families, I think, need for the world we're living in now, and there's great practical skills between yourself and your husband in terms of everything from home building to growing your own food to preserving your own remedies to kind of figuring out what kind of healthcare is going to work for you, you know, because like I always think of, if Alex doesn't mind me mentioning it, like that when I met him first, he was introduced to me as someone who could do thatching. Then he went off and studied and qualified to be an osteopath. Then, you know, works with adults with learning disabilities, built his own house, you know, like just has just so many skills, as you yourself do, which makes the idea that we don't always have to go outside of ourselves to find you know, the kind of skills that we need to hand on to our family, or if our children do show an interest in something, we know where to find the person in the community or in the network or in the family circle who can share that bit of information with the kids.
Ask for help and ask for social. Go do your social stuff. Hang out with other people who get you, who love you, who don't only hang out with people who agree with you, of course, and you're not going to agree with other people about everything. But like, then I always hesitate to say the side of people who, like Alex, is remarkably able to turn his hand to an awful lot of things. If you can't, that's okay too. I think that's so important. We don't have to, we deify people who we think know more than us. I think that's a huge thing. And we all have our gifts and talents. And again, I would say follow your joy. Whatever you like doing that you are drawn to and you can't help doing it. Even it could be watching fucking Netflix. You could be, what kind of Netflix do you like watching? Do you like watching shows about how people relate to each other? Do you like watching shows about, you know, then you have an interest in human relationships. Then you're probably, you could be good at listening to people or talking to people or helping people sort things out. You know, it doesn't always have to be something really impressive. And it's the same with kids. You'll meet child prodigies the whole time in home ed as well. And you know, I say child prodigies a bit facetiously, but like, you'll see kids and think they're just so well behaved and they're so and I'm
artistic or creative or something,
or articulate, or and you will tend to think, oh God,
my child doesn't have that skill, or
and back
am I
to
failing them, or
you know,
the comparison,
the cause and effect thing as well. You will get people who will, you'll feel judged in situations because people will know your kids are home educated and they're watching everything they do and thinking that child's not reared properly, or you're going to feel that size,
or giving them maths quizzes. Like, that's what our kids found a lot of the time. The people would say, what's 6 million plus, you know, to a small child.
And I think it's really important not to get into us versus them mentality. We're all, here as human beings, and we all. That's why I would definitely say. I've said to parents who want to home educate, but they're not quite sure if it's right for them, or they can't fit it into their lives, or that's fine too. I think, being open to learning from your children and being on their side. I've met so many parents and I've been like, they're so amazing the way they've advocated for the children. They've said they're not doing homework because we're not doing that because I think
even though they're in the school system,
even though they're in the school system, I think, being on your side as a child and listening to them is so much more important. Even if you find for whatever reason you decide not to home educate, but you love the idea, don't feel that that the home ed people are going to look down on you. Or maybe some of them will. I hope not, but like, we should and we can all support each other. And because I definitely spent a huge amount of my life in fight or flight mentality. It's easy to think when you're doing things differently, everyone's looking at you and judging. And yeah, some people will. Yeah. They will. That's what we do.
Yeah. But other people's opinion of you is actually none of your business.
Yeah,
and you're very freeing
yeah,
statement.
It is, and you give people permission to be themselves when you just are yourself, I think, and follow your joy. And yeah, I would absolutely say go for it to people, and don't worry that your kids are going to fall behind. Even if you keep them home till they're 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 or whatever age, 17 in my case, 16, they can catch up. Don't worry that they're going to fall behind. We're hearing a huge amount of this at the moment with COVID. People worrying about
people doing kind of remote mentoring for, submitting
so the kids
schoolwork and stuff.
It's not true that if you miss a day of school or you miss a unit of maths or you miss it, then you can't make it up later. That's not true at all. That and information and accurate information and glut of information has never been so freely available to everyone.
It's actually the critical skills to sort through what's really necessary is
and try not to get saturated in it. I don't know. And so on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. And thanks to Siobhan, and thanks to her younger son and the dog, who were very quiet and cooperative while we were recording this. So thanks a million.
Thank you.
He was cool.